Donald Trump is in obvious cognitive and physical decline, but sometimes we see it a little bit more than others. And this is an example tonight. Donald Trump taking those tiny little fingers of his to Truth Social, and because of one man, the man it seems, who gets under his skin more than anyone else, and that is Gavin Newsom, who has spent the past 2 weeks, or really entire presidency of Donald Trump's, ripping into him and leading Donald Trump to collapse in an angry and dementia-addled post tonight on Truth Social that we are going to get into. But it starts with what Governor Newsom had to say in 2 videos, talking not just about how Donald Trump's tariff failure represents his weakness and how he tries to impose himself as this insecure little bully, but also just what a jackass he is. And of course, Governor Newsom's own words. I want to start with those 2 clips before we get to Trump's collapse of a posting meltdown, showing his cognitive decline that the internet is just stunned by.
There will not be a fair and free election in the United States of America as we know it unless we win back the House of Representatives this November. He's not screwing around. In Fulton County yesterday, I met with the commissioners there. He's not screwing around. He's trying to nationalize election one day, 2 days later says, oh, it's just in 15 blue states. This SAVE Act and what he's trying to do, very familiar here in South Carolina.
Yes.
It's not just about ID, it's about registration and who should vote, who can vote. This is happening on our watch in real time in the United States of America 2026. For things to change, we need to change. So my approach changed. That switch came off. It was a bright light, not darkness. It was daylight. Do something different. Call this out. Fight fire with fire. And you know what happens? It's always the case. Also use humor. You know what all fascists and dictators have in common? They don't like being mocked.
No.
And part of it is this mystique. They want us to respond outraged because it suggests they're more powerful than they actually are. Donald Trump is weakness masquerading as strength.
Yes.
He's in retreat right now. He's in retreat because of all of you, because the steel spine of the folks in Minnesota, because those of you that have showed up here and all across the country at the No Kings rally, you guys are stepping up and stepping in. You're the freedom fighters. You're the patriots in this country. You're the ones standing up for freedom and free speech. You're the ones that are embracing the flag, not Donald Trump. He's trying to wreck this country. And it's one of the great grifts we've ever seen in human history. And let's call that out. Breaking things is not strength. Tearing things down, that's not strength. That Rayburn building, I don't know if anyone, Sam Rayburn had a great quote. He said, any, forgive the language, jackass can tear down a barn, but it takes a skilled carpenter to build one. Tearing things down is not strength. Trump is not a builder. He's a jackass.
I think Governor Newsom has given a pretty great read of Donald Trump when it comes to his cognitive decline and certainly when it comes to his internal insecurities. Donald Trump is a person who is deeply, deeply insecure, much like everyone in his administration. Do you think Kash Patel would need to fly around on his private jets and party with Team USA if he wasn't insecure? Would Pete Hegseth have to cover himself in makeup and do his fake raw weightlifting? By the way, Pete Hegseth is pretending that he put up 315 on the bench. He did not. Those were fake weights. I just had to say that. But Donald Trump, an insecure man himself, because mommy and daddy never gave him enough hugs, has filled his administration with insecure people. So not only are tariffs a tool for Donald Trump to carry out maximum corruption, but also for him to blow himself up and act tough and pretend he's a real man, when in fact the bluster is just all bullshit. And Gavin is exactly right that he has used this as a tool to try to extract as much as possible, but also inflict as much as possible and take out his insecurities on working Americans who have been illegally, because of Donald Trump's illegal tax, paying more for their groceries, paying more for any given commodity. And Donald Trump does it, again, he wants to make his own money, but because he wants to feel tough and that people are afraid of him. But they are not. They see him for what he is. You got makeup globbed on your hands. You got cankles that Carolyn Levitt tries to cover up. You can't read a speech. You're in cognitive decline. It's obvious. And so Donald Trump, very upset with his biggest political foe, it seems, and maybe clearly thinking about wanting to run again, took to Truth Social to show us just how bad his dementia is. Trump wrote on Truth Social, wow, Gavin Newsom just dropped out of the presidential race. President DJT. Hey, you sundowning moron. It's 2026. There is no presidential race. Gavin Newsom hasn't announced, neither has any other candidate. You're not allowed to run, by the way, dumb little Donnie. Let's make that very clear. And nobody wants you to, no matter how much you talk about fake polls. I don't even know what Donald Trump could possibly be referring to. Of course, Gavin Newsom right now is on a book tour that we see from a lot of presidential ramping up candidates. I don't think it's a big secret that Governor Newsom will likely be running for president. And we actually have some big news to break on that front, on the book tour front, not the presidential front coming soon. I don't know if you live in the state of New Hampshire, you might be a little bit more affected and interested by this news, but we're going to leave that for a different day. But yes, Gavin Newsom is kind of letting people know that we're ramping up the presidential run. He's not said it exact, but we know what it is. Gavin's running for president. I think Gavin's currently leading as the front runner. Of course, a lot could happen. There's lots of candidates. We don't need to get into 2028 talk. I think right now we should focus on the midterms and beating the shit out of the fascists. But what is Donald Trump even talking about? He is clearly collapsing internally. He sees his polls are dog shit. He sees Gavin Newsom beating up on him very publicly in a very humiliating way. He doesn't like that Gavin has energy, that he is able to speak in coherent sentences, and he doesn't like that about anyone else. He doesn't like when John Ossoff does it. He doesn't like when Zohran Mamdani does it. He doesn't like when he sees certainly any woman or woman of color doing it. That really upsets Donald Trump. And it is because he is so deeply insecure, not just about himself. We know that to be true. But because Donald Trump recognizes where this is all going. Donald Trump has talked extensively lately about reckoning with his own mortality. He knows that the end is coming. Why else would he be literally trying to carve his name in stone on the Kennedy Center or the ballroom or a dumb arch that nobody wants in a new street in D.C.? It is because Donald Trump understands that his legacy is already set in stone. And that there is nothing he can do, nothing he can build, nothing he can erect, or no airport or Grand Central Station that he can change the name of that will make him be remembered as anything other than the worst president in American history. And so he looks at Gavin Newsom and his political prospects, someone with a fresh future, and wishes maybe he had some of that. Donald Trump right now, and has admittedly said so, believes the presidency is keeping him alive, which is all the much more of a reason to invoke the 25th Amendment, if it's really sustaining his lifeblood. But Donald Trump wants to hang on to power because he thinks power is the only thing keeping him alive. Donald Trump has talked extensively about what it was like when his father, Fred Trump, retired because of his dementia and how quickly it consumes him. And I think that consumes Donald Trump, knowing that he has set down the same path, that he is in cognitive and physical decline, and that we see it. And there is no amount of bluster and bullshit and bloviating, as I should say, now I'm speaking like Donald Trump, that can change the outcome of what his legacy is. No fake peace prizes, no trophies for big, quite frankly, beautiful coal. And we don't love coal because it's not great, actually. Can change the reality that Donald Trump is facing down. And that scares Donald Trump. So he is going to collapse on Truth Social with those tiny, tiny little fingers of his. He's going to attack Gavin Newsom. He's going to freak out because he wishes it was him. He wishes he could run for president again. He wishes he was younger, although that younger version of him was in his early 70s. Not that there's anything wrong with being in your early 70s, but there's something wrong with being in your early 70s and being Donald Trump. I think we can agree upon that. And so right now it is driving him crazy. He knows his legacy is set. He knows we hate him. He knows that there is nothing that can be done. He will lose these midterms. Democrats will spend the next, it's almost 3 years now, but 2 years investigating him, ripping him to shreds, putting him through more legal accountability that he deserves along with everyone in his administration. And that will be it. That is what Donald Trump has to look forward to. And all of us hating him. And eventually, the Joe Rogans of the world who loudly endorsed him just a year ago will say that they didn't really mean it or they regret it. And all the MAGA supporters will slowly abandon him, and Donald Trump's legacy will be nothing, as he hopefully one day faces real accountability. That is what he has to look forward to. And that, my friends, if you need some joy tonight, scares the shit out of dementia-addled Donnie. So if you need something to look forward to, it is that. And if you need a little bit of excitement that really upsets Donald Trump, just listen to this clip of Governor Newsom.
Thanks.
The Supreme Court struck down most of President Trump's tariffs this week. He's already using different authorities to impose a 15% global tariff, vowing to forge ahead even without Congress. What do you do?
Well, what does anyone do? You're going to move your factory from overseas and onshore it with 150-day certainty on a 15% tax or tariff? I mean, the whole thing is a farce. I talk about petulance. It was 10% 2 days ago, maybe 20% tomorrow. I mean, this is madness. He's flailing. He's a punch-drunk boxer. He's just, he's just trying to hit anything, a shadow. And he's a shadow of himself. He's lost a step or two. Under the IEEPA, we were the first state to sue. I was out there in the Central Valley talking about how this is going to impact ranchers and small businesses and farmers, the ag community. My state larger than any other state in the country. And Justice Roberts, by the way, basically our arguments were literally laid out in detail in his response. So it was always an illegal act. He needs to return that money, needs to refund that money with interest. He could do that in a nanosecond. They could do that electronically. They can do electronically. They have the tariff codes. They have the ability. They do refunds all the time. They have the ability to do that. The problem is for families, it's been about $1,701 a year. That's a different requirement that I think he has to pay the American people back. I saw Bessent out there almost gleeful. He was gleeful that no, we won't be doing it. This is Dumb and Dumber, Trump and Bessent. They've wrecked this economy. 1.4% GDP growth in the last quarter. Inflation back up to 3%. The worst jobs market we've seen since 2013. 2.2% GDP for the entire year. He inherited 2.8. It's a wrecking ball presidency. He's wrecking this economy. His entire economic paradigm is mass deportations, tax cuts for billionaires, and tariffs. And he's been exposed. He's a fraud. And by the way, the tariff, this is a self-dealing operation. This is about his personal portfolio. You know exactly what he did in Vietnam with the tariffs. He used them to get a deal on his golf course to fast track his development. Connect the dot. This is unprecedented grift happening in real time. That's reflected in what just happened with the tariff decision in the Supreme Court. It was a profound moment for this administration.
That is a guy who really upsets and scares Donald Trump. And I know there will be lots of people, and I have these criticisms as well, who would love for Governor Newsom to push back more on ICE. I've said this on the show, to push back more on billionaires and ensuring that California is leading the nation on fighting for a wealth tax. I agree. And we have time to ask those questions. And that is the last tease I'm going to do of some big news that's coming out as it relates to this show and Gavin Newsom that we will get into later. But if you want to be the first to it, you can hit that notification bell, but you can also hit that subscribe button, leave a like on this video. If you stuck around to the end, drop a blue heart in the comments. Keep on fighting, y'all. Don't let them silence you. And until next time, I'll see you soon.